3 years after I walked away from Charlotte, I saw her again in the last place I ever expected. She was standing outside a downtown Toronto cafe, holding a coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. But the moment her eyes landed on me, her smile dropped so fast it was like someone had slapped it off her face. Her fingers tightened around the coffee cup until the lid popped. And for the first time in 3 years, Charlotte looked like the one who couldn't breathe. Not me, not anymore, because 3 years ago I left her without even saying goodbye. I vanished. And I did it because I was a coward. I did it because I thought she deserved better than me. And I did it because I thought she would forget me. But watching her stand there, frozen, staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost, I realized something terrifying. Charlotte didn't forget, she just survived. And the worst part, she had no idea why I left. No idea why I broke her heart like it meant nothing. No idea that I'd been carrying her name like a wound ever since. And when she finally spoke, her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was quiet, like she was trying not to fall apart in public. She said, "Noah," and I swear to God, I felt every regret I'd ever made slam into my chest all at once. Because the truth was, I didn't come back to Toronto to run into her. I came back because I couldn't live with what I did anymore. I came back because I wanted to fix it. But I didn't know if I deserved the chance. And I didn't know if Charlotte would ever let me near her again. But I was about to find out. My name is Noah, and I'm 31 years old now. Back then, when all of this happened, I was 28. And at 28, I thought I was a man. I thought I knew what love meant. I thought I knew how to handle life. Turns out, I didn't know anything. I grew up in Ontario, just outside Toronto. Middle-class family, nothing dramatic. No sob story. My dad was the kind of guy who didn't talk about emotions. He believed if you worked hard and paid your bills, you were doing life right. My mom was softer, but she wasn't the kind of woman who pushed feelings either. So I grew up thinking love was quiet. Love was paying for dinner. Love was showing up. Love was not complaining. And then I met Charlotte. Charlotte was the opposite of everything I knew. She was the kind of person who smiled with her whole face. The kind of woman who could walk into a room and make it feel warmer. She laughed loudly. She spoke her mind. She cared about everything. Dogs, strangers, homeless people on the street, kids, her family, even me. She cared about me more than I cared about myself. And that was the first thing that scared me. I met her at a mutual friend's birthday party in downtown Toronto. One of those cramped condo parties where everyone's holding drinks and trying not to spill on expensive furniture. I remember standing awkwardly near the kitchen island, pretending to look busy on my phone. And then she walked up beside me and said, "You look like you want to teleport out of here." I glanced at her. She was wearing a black dress, simple, but she made it look like something straight out of a movie. Her hair was tied up messy like she didn't care if it was perfect. She had this confident, playful energy. I said, "Is it that obvious?" She smiled. "Only to people who also want to teleport out of here." And just like that, it felt like we were on the same team. That night we talked for hours. She told me about her job in marketing, about her dream of someday starting her own agency. I told her I worked in construction project management, that my job was basically babysitting grown men who hated being told what to do. She laughed so hard she almost choked on her drink. At some point she looked at me and said, "You're quieter than everyone else here, but you're paying attention. I like that." No one had ever said something like that to me before. Usually people just called me boring, but Charlotte didn't say it like an insult. She said it like it was something valuable, and that's what she did. She made me feel valuable. We started dating within a month. And when I say dating, I mean real dating, not the casual, half-hearted stuff people do these days. She'd plan little adventures. She'd drag me to small restaurants in Chinatown. She'd take me to random festivals. She made me try bubble tea even though I thought it looked disgusting. She made me watch cheesy romantic movies and then laughed at me when I pretended I hated them. And I didn't realize it at the time, but Charlotte was slowly building a home inside my chest. A place where I felt safe, a place where I felt loved, a place where I could breathe, and then I ruined it. The truth is, Charlotte and I weren't perfect. We argued sometimes, mostly about small things, like how I was always working late, how I didn't talk about my feelings, how I shut down when something stressed me out. Charlotte would always say, "Noah, you don't have to carry everything alone." And I'd always answer, "I'm fine." I wasn't fine, but I didn't know how to explain that. I had this constant pressure in my chest. Like I had to prove I deserved her. Charlotte came from a stable family, parents still together, big family dinners, cousins, uncles, warm laughter. Meanwhile, my family was quiet. We loved each other, but we weren't expressive. Charlotte's family treated me like I was already part of them. Her dad would clap me on the shoulder and say, "You're a good man, Noah." Her mom would send leftovers home with me. Her little sister would tease me and call me boring Noah, but she said it affectionately. Charlotte would look at me across the table, eyes soft, and I'd feel like my chest was going to burst, because I wanted that. I wanted to belong. But deep down, I always felt like I didn't, and then the biggest stress hit. My company got a major contract and they offered me a promotion. It was huge, more money, better title. But it also meant longer hours, more responsibility, more pressure. Charlotte was excited for me. She hugged me and said, "This is your moment." But inside, I felt like I was drowning. Because I was already barely keeping my head above water. I started working insane hours. I'd leave early and come home late. Charlotte tried to be patient. She'd cook dinner and keep it warm. She'd text me little messages like, "Proud of you." Sometimes she'd fall asleep waiting for me on the couch. And I'd walk in, see her curled up under a blanket, and my heart would twist. Because she deserved someone who came home on time, someone who prioritized her, someone who didn't treat love like a side project, but I didn't know how to balance it. And then one night everything changed. I came home late around midnight. Charlotte was awake. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a folder in front of her. She looked nervous. I remember thinking she looked too serious. She said, "Can you sit?" I sat down. She slid the folder toward me. It was a printed document, and I swear my stomach dropped before I even read it. She whispered, "I'm pregnant." For a second I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank. Charlotte was watching me, her eyes searching my face. I should have smiled. I should have jumped up and hugged her. I should have said, "We're going to be parents." But instead, I felt terror, not because I didn't want a baby, but because I didn't think I was good enough to be a father. I didn't think I was stable enough. I didn't think I was ready. And the worst part, Charlotte saw it. She saw the fear, she saw the hesitation, and her face changed, just slightly. But enough that I still remember it. She said, "Say something." I forced out, "Are you sure?" Her eyes widened. She looked hurt. "Yes, Noah, I'm sure." I swallowed hard. I said, "Okay, okay." She waited, and I didn't say the right thing. I didn't say anything, because my brain was screaming that I was about to ruin her life. Charlotte's voice cracked. "You're not happy." I said, "No, I am. I'm shocked." She stared at me for a long time. Then she whispered, "I thought you'd smile." And that sentence is the moment I started losing her, because I did want to smile, I wanted to be happy, but fear had its hands around my throat, and I couldn't breathe. The next few weeks were awful. Charlotte tried to be normal. She tried to be excited. She showed me baby name lists. She showed me little baby clothes online. She talked about moving to a slightly bigger place. She talked about the future, but I could feel her watching me, testing me, like she was waiting for me to become the man she needed. And I was trying, I really was, but the pressure was crushing me. Work was insane. My promotion came with constant meetings, deadlines, people yelling at me. And then at home, Charlotte was glowing with hope, and I was terrified of being the reason that hope died. One night, Charlotte asked me, "Do you even want this?" And I didn't answer fast enough. That pause, that silence, it killed something between us. She stood up from the couch, tears in her eyes. "I don't want to raise a baby with a man who looks like he's being sentenced." I snapped. "That's not fair," she yelled, "then prove me wrong," and I didn't, because I didn't know how. I went to bed that night feeling like the worst person alive. And the next morning, I got a call from my mom. My dad had collapsed at work, heart issue, not fatal but serious. I rushed to the hospital. Charlotte came too, even though she was exhausted. She held my hand in the waiting room. She whispered, "We'll get through it." And I remember looking at her and thinking, she's too good for me. My dad recovered. But the scare changed something in me. It made me realize life could fall apart at any second. And instead of making me cling to love, it made me panic. Because now I wasn't just responsible for my job. I wasn't just responsible for Charlotte. I wasn't just responsible for a baby. I was also responsible for my parents, for being the man of the family. And the weight of all of it crushed me. One night about a month later, Charlotte was asleep. I sat in the living room staring at the wall. And I had a thought that still haunts me. If I leave now, she can find someone better before it's too late. I convinced myself I was doing the noble thing, that she deserved a man who was excited, a man who wasn't afraid, a man who wouldn't freeze when life got hard. And I wasn't that man, so I did the worst thing I've ever done. I packed a bag, I wrote a note. Not even a real note, just a coward note. It said, "Charlotte, I'm sorry, I can't do this. You deserve better," that was it. No explanation, no closure, no conversation. I left the apartment before she woke up. I turned off my phone, and I drove. I drove until Toronto disappeared behind me. I drove until the city lights turned into highway darkness. And by the time the sun rose, I was in Ottawa, and I felt like I'd ripped my own heart out. I stayed in Ottawa. At first it was supposed to be temporary, just time to breathe. But temporary turned into months. Months turned into years. I changed jobs. I changed my number. I blocked Charlotte on everything. Not because I hated her, because I couldn't handle seeing her pain. I told myself she'd move on, that she'd meet someone kind, someone stable, someone who wouldn't run, but every night I thought about her. Every night I wondered if she was okay, if the baby was okay, if she hated me, if she cried, if she ever forgave me. Sometimes I'd search her name online, just to see if she was alive. I found nothing. No posts, no updates. Charlotte had disappeared from the internet like she disappeared from my life, and the guilt ate me alive. One day, about a year after I left, I got a message from her sister. It was one sentence. "You destroyed her." That was all, and I deserved it. I wanted to reply, I wanted to explain, but what could I say? Sorry I was too weak to stay. Sorry I abandoned you pregnant. There is no apology big enough for that, so I didn't reply. And that silence became my punishment. 3 years passed. I tried dating. It never worked. Every time a woman laughed, I compared it to Charlotte. Every time someone touched my hand, it felt wrong, because my body still remembered her. And then one night, I had a dream. Charlotte was standing in our old kitchen holding a baby. But the baby wasn't crying. The baby was laughing. Charlotte looked at me with eyes full of tears and said, "You don't get to come back now." I woke up sweating, and I realized something. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't the villain in my own story. So I made a decision. I requested a transfer back to Toronto, not because I expected forgiveness, but because I needed to face what I did. I needed to know what happened. I needed to see her, even if she slammed the door in my face, even if she screamed at me, even if she spat on me. I deserved it, but I needed to see her alive, so I moved back. And 2 weeks after I arrived, I saw her, outside that cafe, holding coffee, laughing, alive, beautiful, and when she looked at me, it was like the world stopped. Charlotte stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. I stared back, frozen. She looked different, not in a bad way. She looked stronger. Her hair was shorter now, styled neatly. Her clothes were classy. Her posture was straight, confident. But her eyes still held the same softness, until she recognized me. Then the softness turned into shock, then anger, then something that looked like heartbreak all over again. She whispered, "Noah." My throat felt dry. I forced out, "Charlotte." Her coffee cup slipped slightly in her hand. She caught it. She blinked like she was trying not to cry. Then she stepped closer, voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed. "I live here again." Her laugh was bitter. "Of course you do." I flinched. She looked me up and down like she couldn't believe I was real. Then she said, 3 years. I nodded. "Yeah." She shook her head slowly. "No call, no message, nothing." I whispered, "I know." Charlotte's jaw clenched. "Do you know what you did to me?" I couldn't answer, because yes, I knew. And yet I also knew I didn't know, because I wasn't the one who lived through it. Charlotte suddenly looked past me like she was checking the street. Then she looked back at me sharply. "Why are you here?" I said the truth. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." Charlotte's eyes flashed. "That's funny, because I had to stop thinking about you just to survive." That sentence hit me like a punch. I whispered, "I'm sorry." Charlotte scoffed. No, don't do that." She stepped back. "Don't come back into my life with a sorry." I said, "I didn't mean to run into you like this." She laughed again, sharp. "You didn't mean to leave either, right?" I didn't argue, because she was right. I didn't mean to destroy her, but I did. Charlotte's phone buzzed. She glanced down. Her face changed, like she remembered something. Then she looked at me and said, "I have to go." My heart panicked. "Wait." She turned to walk away. I said, "Charlotte, please, just 1 minute." She stopped. She didn't turn around. She just stood there with her back to me. And she said quietly, "You don't get to ask for 1 minute anymore, Noah." Then she walked away. And I stood there like an idiot watching her disappear into the crowd. My chest burned, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't offended. I was ashamed because she was right. I had forfeited my right to her time the moment I left. And yet I wasn't going to give up. Not this time. That night I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was one question, the baby. I didn't know if she kept it. I didn't know if she gave birth. I didn't know if I had a son or a daughter. And the fear of finding out was almost unbearable, because what if I did? What if I had a child out there who didn't even know my name? What if Charlotte raised them alone while I hid like a coward? I sat in my apartment staring at my phone. I still remembered her number. I had memorized it without even trying. But I didn't call, because what right did I have? Instead, I did something pathetic. I drove past our old building, the place we lived together, the place I abandoned. I parked across the street and stared up at the balcony. It was dark. Someone else lived there now. Someone else laughed there. Someone else made memories there. And I realized that apartment wasn't my home anymore. Charlotte wasn't my home anymore because I threw it away. I sat in the car for an hour just staring, then I drove back. And on the way, I made a decision. I would talk to her, not to demand forgiveness, not to demand a second chance, but to give her the truth, the full truth, because she deserved that much. She deserved closure at least, even if she never wanted to see me again. The next week, I went back to the cafe, same time of day. I didn't know if she'd be there. But I hoped. I sat outside pretending to read. My hands were shaking. I felt like a teenager waiting for a crush. Then I saw her. Charlotte walked up the street and my heart jumped, but she wasn't alone. A little girl was holding her hand. Maybe 3 years old, dark hair, tiny pink jacket, and the moment I saw that child, my world tilted, because the little girl looked like me. She had my eyes, my nose, my shape. Charlotte saw me sitting there. Her face tightened immediately. She stopped walking. The little girl looked up at her and said something I couldn't hear. Charlotte crouched down and whispered back, smoothing her hair. Then she stood up and walked toward me. Slowly, carefully, like she was approaching something dangerous. She stopped a few feet away. Her voice was cold. "What are you doing here?" I stood up. My eyes kept flicking to the little girl. The child stared at me with innocent curiosity. Charlotte noticed my gaze and stepped slightly in front of her, protective. My voice cracked. "Is she?" Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "Don't." I swallowed hard. "Charlotte, please." She clenched her jaw. Then she looked down at the little girl and said gently, "Sweetheart, can you stand right here for 1 second?" The little girl nodded. Charlotte looked back at me and her voice dropped low. "Her name is Lily." My heart stopped. "Lily?" Charlotte's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. She said, "Yes, Noah, she's yours." The world went quiet. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My knees almost gave out. I whispered, "I have a daughter." Charlotte's laugh was bitter again. "You have a daughter you abandoned before she was even born." That sentence broke me. I looked down at Lily. She was watching me with wide eyes, thumb in her mouth. I wanted to fall to my knees. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to apologize to a child who didn't even know what an apology meant. But Charlotte stepped forward again, blocking my view. Her voice was sharp. "Don't look at her like that." I whispered. "Like what?" She said, "Like you deserve her." And she was right. I didn't deserve her. I didn't deserve Charlotte, but I wasn't going to run again. I said quietly, "Charlotte, I need to talk to you." She shook her head. "No, you needed to talk to me 3 years ago." I said, I know I did, and I'm sorry. I was terrified. I was." She cut me off. "Terrified." "I was pregnant and alone, Noah. I was terrified." My eyes burned. I whispered, "I know." Charlotte looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed like she was exhausted. She looked down at Lily and said, "Okay, we're going home." Then she looked at me again. "You can walk with us, but you don't touch her, you don't talk to her, and you don't think this means anything." My heart pounded. I nodded. "Okay." So I walked beside them. 3 strangers, 1 broken family, and every step felt like walking through the consequences of my own choices. Charlotte lived in a townhouse now, about 30 minutes outside downtown Toronto. It was clean, cozy, clearly loved. She opened the door and Lily ran inside yelling, "Grandma!" A woman appeared from the kitchen. Charlotte's mom. She froze when she saw me. Her face went pale, then her expression twisted into rage. "Noah," Charlotte sighed. "Mom, please." Her mom's eyes were furious. "You have the audacity to show your face?" I swallowed hard. "Mrs. Bennett, She pointed at me. "Don't speak. Don't you dare speak in my house." Charlotte stepped between us. "Mom, please, I need to handle this." Her mom looked at Charlotte, then at Lily, then back at me. She muttered, "Unbelievable," and she walked away, shaking her head. Charlotte looked at me. Her voice was quiet but deadly. "You want to talk? Fine, talk." I nodded. We sat at the kitchen table. The same kind of table we once dreamed about sharing as a family. Lily's laughter echoed from the living room, where her grandma was playing with her. Charlotte stared at me like she was holding herself together with tape. I whispered, "She's beautiful." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "Don't," I nodded. "Okay." Silence. Then Charlotte said, "Tell me why." My throat tightened. "Why what?" She slammed her hand on the table. Not hard enough to scare Lily, but hard enough to make me flinch. "Why did you leave me pregnant? Why did you disappear? Why did you block me like I was nothing?" My eyes filled. I whispered, "Because I was scared." Charlotte's laugh was sharp. "You keep saying that like it excuses anything." I shook my head. It doesn't excuse it, it explains it." Charlotte crossed her arms. "Explain." So I did. I told her everything about the promotion, the pressure, the hospital scare with my dad, the fear that I would fail her, that I would fail the baby, that I would ruin everything. I said, "I convinced myself that if I left, you'd find someone better." Charlotte stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then her voice cracked. So you destroyed me because you thought you were being noble? I whispered, yes. Charlotte shook her head slowly. Tears finally slipped down her cheeks. You don't get to decide what I deserve, Noah. That sentence hit like a hammer. She wiped her tears angrily. Do you know what I did after you left? I shook my head. She leaned forward, voice trembling. I begged you, I called you. I went to your parents, I asked them if you were dead. My heart sank, she continued. I cried until I threw up, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't breathe. I whispered, Charlotte. She slammed her hand again. I had to go to therapy because I thought I wasn't enough. My eyes burned. I said, you were always enough. Charlotte's voice rose. Then why did you leave? I had no answer, because the truth was I didn't leave because she wasn't enough. I left because I wasn't enough, and I was too weak to admit it. Charlotte's shoulders shook. She whispered, I gave birth alone. I felt like my soul left my body. She continued. I was in labor for 12 hours. My mom held my hand, and I kept looking at the door like an idiot, thinking maybe you'd walk in. I covered my mouth. My chest hurt so badly I thought I might vomit. Charlotte wiped her tears again. And when Lily came out and they put her on my chest, I didn't feel joy. Her voice cracked. I felt grief because she was supposed to have you. That broke me. I started crying, not a quiet tear, I mean real ugly sobbing. Charlotte watched me eyes hard, and she said, you don't get to cry now. I nodded, wiping my face. You're right, I don't. Then she stood up. You wanted closure, you got it, now leave. My heart panicked. Charlotte, please, she pointed at the door. Leave. And I did, because she deserved control, she deserved power, and I deserved the pain. That night I wrote a letter, a real one, not the coward note I left behind. I wrote everything. I wrote about how sorry I was, how ashamed, how I thought about her every day, how I never stopped loving her, how I would never ask her to forgive me, but I would spend the rest of my life trying to become a man worth forgiving. I ended it with, if you ever let me, I want to be Lily's father, not a stranger, not a ghost, a father. I dropped the letter in her mailbox the next morning, then I waited. Days passed, nothing, weeks, nothing. I thought that was it. I thought I'd lost them forever. Then one evening my phone buzzed, unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice said quietly, Noah, it's Charlotte. My heart stopped. She said, Lily asked about you. I whispered, what did she say? Charlotte's voice was shaky. She asked why you looked sad when you saw her. I swallowed hard. Charlotte continued. She said you looked like you wanted to hug her. Tears filled my eyes. Charlotte whispered, I don't know what you want from us, but if you want to be in her life, you have to do it properly. I nodded rapidly. I will, I swear, Charlotte sighed. Come tomorrow, 4 p.m., we'll go to the park. Lily can meet you properly. My voice cracked. Thank you, Charlotte paused, then she said quietly, don't thank me, earn it. And she hung up. The next day I showed up early. I sat on a park bench like my life depended on it. When Charlotte arrived holding Lily's hand, my heart nearly exploded. Lily had a little pink backpack and a stuffed bunny. She looked at me with curious eyes. Charlotte crouched beside her and said gently, Lily, remember the man you saw? Lily nodded. Charlotte pointed at me. This is Noah. Lily tilted her head. Noah, Charlotte nodded. Then she said the words that shattered me. He's your dad. Lily blinked. Then she smiled, a small, innocent smile, and she said, Hi, Dad. I swear I felt my whole body break open. I knelt down in front of her, tears in my eyes. I whispered, Hi, sweetheart. Lily giggled. She reached out and touched my face. Then she said, You're tall. I laughed through tears. Yeah, I guess I am. Charlotte stood behind her, arms crossed, watching carefully. Lily looked at me seriously. Mommy said you were gone. My throat tightened. I whispered, Yeah, I was. Lily frowned. Did you get lost? I looked at Charlotte. Charlotte's eyes were glossy, but her face was hard. I looked back at Lily and said softly, Yeah, I got lost. But I'm here now. Lily nodded like that made sense. Then she held out her bunny. This is Mr. Floppy, I smiled. Nice to meet you, Mr. Floppy. Lily giggled again, and in that moment I realized I didn't deserve this. But I wanted it more than anything. The next few months were slow. Charlotte didn't let me rush anything. She didn't let me pretend we were a happy family. She treated me like someone on probation, and honestly, that was fair. I started by seeing Lily once a week, then twice. Then eventually Charlotte allowed me to pick her up from daycare sometimes. Lily warmed up to me fast. Kids are like that. They love without understanding the past. She'd run to me shouting, Dad? And every time she said it, my chest ached. Because I knew I didn't deserve that word, but I also knew I would spend my whole life earning it. Charlotte stayed distant. She was polite, but guarded. She didn't smile at me the way she used to. She didn't laugh with me. She didn't touch me. And I didn't push. Because I knew her heart had scars with my name carved into them. One day, Lily was playing on the floor and Charlotte was making tea. I stood in the kitchen doorway and said quietly, "Thank you for letting me be here." Charlotte didn't look at me. She said, "I'm not doing it for you." I nodded. "I know." She finally turned to face me. Her eyes were tired. She whispered, "You don't understand what you took from me." I swallowed. "Tell me." Charlotte's voice cracked. "You took my trust. You took my excitement. You took my future." I whispered. "I know," she continued. "I used to look at you like you were my safe place." That sentence hurt because it was true. I had been her safe place, and then I became her trauma. Charlotte sighed and looked away. "I don't know if I can ever love you the same," I said quietly. "I don't expect you to." Charlotte's eyes flicked to me. I continued. "I just want the chance to love you properly this time, even if you never love me back." Charlotte stared at me for a long time. Then she whispered, "That's what you should have said 3 years ago." And she walked away. But she didn't slam the door. She didn't kick me out. And somehow that felt like hope. One evening, Lily got sick, high fever. Charlotte called me in a panic. I rushed over. Charlotte looked exhausted, hair messy, face pale. Lily was crying in bed. Charlotte whispered, "I don't know what to do." And for the first time, I saw her vulnerable again. Not angry Charlotte, not guarded Charlotte, just Charlotte, the woman I loved, the woman I hurt. I picked Lily up carefully, rocked her gently. I whispered, "Hey, baby, Dad's here." Lily whimpered and rested her head on my shoulder. Charlotte watched me, her eyes softened slightly. We took Lily to the hospital. We sat in the waiting room together, just like 3 years ago when my dad was in the hospital. And I realized the irony. Back then, Charlotte stayed. She held my hand, she didn't run, and I abandoned her. But now, here we were again, and this time I wasn't leaving. Lily got treated, nothing serious, just a viral fever. But that night when we got back to Charlotte's house, Lily fell asleep quickly. Charlotte and I stood in the kitchen in silence. Then Charlotte suddenly started crying. Quietly, like she was trying to hide it. I stepped closer. "Charlotte," she shook her head. "Don't," I whispered. "I'm not going to leave." Charlotte's shoulders trembled. She said, "I don't know how to trust you," I said softly. "Then don't trust me yet, just watch me. Let me prove it." Charlotte looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, and for the first time in years, she didn't look at me like an enemy. She looked at me like someone she missed. Then she whispered, "I hated you so much." I nodded. "I know," she continued. "And I hated myself for still loving you." My breath caught. She covered her mouth like she regretted saying it. But it was out, the truth, and I whispered, "I never stopped loving you, Charlotte." "Not for one day?" She stared at me, and then she did something I never expected. She stepped forward and pressed her forehead to my chest, like she was tired of holding herself up alone. And she whispered, "You broke me." I wrapped my arms around her gently, not tightly, not possessively, just carefully, like she was something fragile. I whispered, "I know, and I'm sorry." Charlotte cried quietly against me, and I just held her for a long time, not trying to fix it, not trying to rush forgiveness. Just holding her like I should have done from the beginning. From that night on, things changed. Not instantly, not magically, but slowly. Charlotte started letting me stay longer. She started asking my opinion on Lily's daycare. She started laughing sometimes. And one evening, Lily was asleep, and Charlotte and I were watching TV. Charlotte looked at me suddenly and said, "Why did you come back?" I paused. Then I said the truth. "Because I realized running didn't make me a better man, it just made me a lonely one." Charlotte nodded slowly. I continued. "And because I realized you weren't the problem, I was." Charlotte's eyes softened. I whispered, "I don't want to be the man who abandons his family. I want to be the man who stays even when it's hard." Charlotte's voice was quiet. "What if I can't forgive you?" I looked at her and said softly, "Then I'll still be Lily's father. I'll still show up. I'll still do right by you even if you never love me again." Charlotte stared at me. And then she whispered, "That's the first time you've ever sounded like a dad." I smiled sadly. "Yeah, it took me long enough." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears again. But this time she wasn't crying from pain. She was crying from something else. Something hopeful. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in 3 years she held it. A few weeks later, Lily had a daycare event. Parents were invited. Charlotte and I went together. Lily ran around with other kids, laughing. Charlotte stood beside me, arms folded. She looked nervous. I whispered, "You okay?" Charlotte nodded. Then she said quietly, "I never imagined we'd be standing here together." I looked at her. "Me neither," she sighed. "Sometimes I still hate you." I nodded. "That's fair." Charlotte looked at me, and for the first time there was a small smile. "But sometimes I look at you with Lily and I feel something else." My chest tightened. "What?" Charlotte whispered. "Like maybe you're becoming the man I thought you could be." That sentence felt like sunlight after years of winter. I said softly, "I'm trying." Charlotte nodded. Then she leaned in slightly, voice low. "Don't ever stop trying." I promised. I won't. The real test came when Charlotte's dad had a health scare. He was admitted to the hospital. Charlotte was shaken, her family was panicking, and I could see the old fear returning in her eyes. The fear of being abandoned again. She didn't say it, but I could feel it. And that night when Charlotte was sitting in the hospital hallway exhausted, I sat beside her. She didn't speak. She just stared at the floor. I took her hand. She didn't pull away. I said quietly, "I'm here." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Promise." I squeezed her hand. "I swear on Lily's life, I'm not going anywhere." Charlotte's face crumpled. She leaned into me. And I held her like I should have held her 3 years ago. Her father recovered, but something else happened. Charlotte's walls cracked open. And one night when Lily was asleep, Charlotte stood in the doorway of her bedroom and said quietly, "Do you want to stay?" My heart pounded. I didn't move. I didn't want to assume. I asked gently, "Are you sure?" Charlotte nodded. "I'm tired of doing everything alone." So I stayed. I slept beside her. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. A few months later, Charlotte and I took Lily to Niagara Falls. It was Lily's first time seeing it. She screamed with excitement, pointing at the water. Charlotte laughed. Real laughter. The kind I remembered. The kind that used to make me feel like life was worth living. Lily ran ahead, holding her bunny. Charlotte stood beside me, hair blowing in the wind. She looked at me and said softly, "I never thought I'd forgive you." I swallowed. "I didn't expect you to," Charlotte nodded, "but I watched you show up over and over." She looked down at Lily. "And I realized something." I waited. Charlotte whispered, "Maybe you didn't come back to take from me." She turned to face me, eyes shining. "Maybe you came back to finally give." My throat tightened. I whispered, "I came back because you were always my home." Charlotte's lips trembled. Then she stepped closer. She rested her hand on my chest. And she said the words that healed something in me. "Then don't ever leave again." I shook my head, voice breaking. "Never." Charlotte leaned in and kissed me, not a rushed kiss, not a desperate kiss, a slow, forgiving kiss. The kind that said, "We're starting again." And Lily turned around and yelled, "EWWW?" Charlotte laughed, pulling away, and I laughed too. Because for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't a ghost. I wasn't a coward. I wasn't the man who ran away. I was a father. I was a partner. I was home. And as we stood there, Niagara roaring behind us, Lily holding our hands, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about showing up every day until you become someone worth forgiving. And I was going to spend the rest of my life proving it. I thought leaving Charlotte would save her, but all it did was break her. Coming back didn't erase what I did. But staying was the first time I finally became the man she deserved.